Alright, so let's do some collectible hunting in the
Cool.
meantime. I will
I
mostly
will.
read I will mostly read what actually get them. For example, I got a musty tome in the meantime. This almanac has been bound in leather and appears to be more than a century old. Writing within is a compilation of history, poetry, translation from across Middle-earth. It gathers together works of antiquity from the great realms of Gondor, Arnor, and Númenor, and even some samples of songs from distant halflings. The most curious entry is the Lament, a work of metered verse whose controversial origin has been debated among scholars for many years. It has been suggested by some that its author was an Ent, one of the ancient shepherds of the trees.
Oh boy, controversy in universe. This should be interesting.
Well, I mean, much like cultural, so we found the memory here.
You were Thelus or Hithless?
I will say this. From what I've seen of the game so far, it does look like, again, for the first game of its particular series, it does seem to do a relatively good job of interjecting you into the world of Mordor. I mean, obviously not during the big Lord of the Rings
Yeah, especially
sessions,
because they
but-
showcase us a side that we didn't really see in the movie. How was Mordor during the transitioning period between it was a more stable place and when Sauron came back after being defeated by the council?
I guess the typical lesson is don't be close to any political structures. Sorry, don't be close to any political struggles, and you were typically fine. If you were, yeah. Still had to deal with some of that BS.
But yeah, you'll notice maybe by the dialogue that it was between a man and a woman. We will learn more about them in a second. Next one.
How many are there total in the game?
30 something, but only half is here. A remarkable find, this artifact may date back to the Second Age, to the Great Númenorian incursion, wherein the Dark Lord Sauron willingly fell into captivity. It would likely have been used by a healer to grind roots and herbs, the creation of politices and unguents required to keep an army hale and relatively healthy. If you forgot, it's one of the things with appendages that I think the Rings of Power series mentioned, that Sauron decided at some point to willingly decide to become captive with Númenorians to corrupt them from within, Jafar style, and force them to do a foolish campaign against the gods of Middle-earth, which resulted in Númenor being completely annihilated, similar to the city of Atlantis, and the realms of men scattered. The price that Sauron had to pay is what that he was stuck in his armor form afterward for the rest of his days.
Remind me, did Tolkien ever write a guide on the expanded lore of the world, or was that stuff made by later
It was something that his children compiled, because essentially what the children did was essentially took all of his writings and essentially rework and compile, adding where a piece of meat was actually missing. They say the first draft of the Silmarillion was a bit more scattered, potentially.
Cool.
Like I said, the children have done actually a decent enough job in cataloging stuff, at the very least.
God, imagine that being the family.
This is also
trait,
why people like Terry Pratchett put a clause in their testament and say that all the things she's created will have been, need to be destroyed. These are prisoner shackles, leg irons to be specific. They date back to the Second Age and were most likely worn by Gondorian captives, men and women, whose involuntary servitude built the towers of teeth flanking the Morannon. These captives would later throw off their shackles and begin new life as outcasts in Udûn. Some would keep their shackles to remind themselves of their hardship, and at some point Jigsaw would get a pair of these.
So would this be okay? So would it be a logical guess to assume that a lot of his stuff is taken from lore written in the
What makes it different is similar to the you have to think about the Dragon Ball OVAs as a comparison, Jova. The characters and the settings are there and are faithful to their source material. But there are stuff that make them actually being placed properly in a timeline if compared to the movies and books that just don't completely match and fits.
No.
So it's best to just assume them to be on a different continuity.
They're not they take place in their own pocket universe.
Oh, that I understand. I'm just wondering again, in regards to how certain things work in the world, how much they're basing this off of
pre-established. This first game actually does a more elegant job with just minor reworking. It could actually fit more tranquilly. Oh, this. A coded journal entry. The skies over Mordor are being cleared by fell beast, the Hellhawk. Crows such as this poor fellow are hunted relentlessly but not as food. No, crows are hunted because each of them oversized black birds is a potential spy. Messenger who might be carrying news to a master outside of Mordor. This crow met its doom trying to deliver a coded name. Now, who do we know that uses crows as a spy outside of Mordor? More on that later as well.
Again, kudos. It really does make you feel like you are legit in the world of Mordor. Maybe not at the moment you remember most of the movies.
And yeah, the dialogue in this case is actually what the spy had to say.
And in the mountains where they do their work, some of it's forges, and they got blacksmiths making armor and all kinds of weapons. They save on metal by making their armor for the front only. Like they're not planning on retreating anymore. Oh, and they got these huge pits too, bigger than I've ever seen. They pull the new orcs, maybe 100 or so a day. Some of them are those Uruk. You can tell them right away, because they've got a head or so on other orcs. About fighting, and immediately start bossing everyone else around. No one's the wiser about me spying.
It sounds more like video game development the more I hear it.
Corporate espionage.
Yep.
But again, more on that when we find also the other coded journals.
They are tough and they're not stupid. We underestimated our enemies.
They are forged for one
Yep.
purpose, to destroy the
I
world
guess there
of
you
man.
go. It's like Tio mentioned earlier. Well, the general consensus of an orc is they're as dumb as a sack of rocks. Do not
Underestimate them
underestimate
at
them.
beyond their own risk, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Alright, this next one is a Serpentine Blade. A deadly sheath, the Serpentine Blade has played a role in many betrayals. Uruk power struggles are legendary. Weakness is not tolerated and warriors move up in ranks by murdering their superiors. The Uruks have been roused by their recent successes in Mordor, and as the soldiers' ambition grows, weapons such as these are becoming more and more common. I mean, it's a bit curved, so it's more used for shanking more than anything.
Would you say that this game definitely encourages finding these artifacts well?
They're very easy to do it. You can even stumble into them. Like again,
okay,
if you dedicate enough of your time, you really will not have any trouble in digging them up.
That's cool.
When it comes to completionism, this is actually very, straightforward in how you do things. The sequel poses a bit more challenges, but that one actually has difficulties sliders if you want.
Okay. One correction from earlier though, Teo. Let's not forget that technically the first DBZ OVA does indeed fit in, because remember it's Garlic Jr.
Some
which
of them
was
do, yes.
well, it's the only one, because remember the Garlic Jr. arc from the anime is entirely anime exclusive, so obviously the anime people would know how to properly, have the because remember the anime even references that OVA via flashbacks, because if you don't watch that OVA, the Garlic Jr. arc comes out of nowhere and you don't know who the hell this guy even is.
I love how the DBZ abridger just completely glossed in there to make a special to actually properly do it. But
Honestly,
anyway, to sum it up, this, because again it's a bit too late to read it, this is actually a rock erupted from Mount Doom, or as it's known, its elf name, Udûn.
I legit thought that was the remnant of a broken weapon.
Get off to, child.
I found this, Daddy.
This kind of rock is very rare. It comes from the volcano. There. Now, Doom is a foul.
I mean, it's literally called Mount Doom.
It will explode when Sauron.
One of these days somebody needs to call a very cutesy and peaceful place Doom just to scare off enemies.
Well, as another collectible will say, people speculated that Sauron deliberately decided to make his base of operation near Mount Doom because it felt, it was appropriate for him.
It is a rock.
Wow, so he was basically following the
To
brand.
stay on brand, yes.
It is silent to this very day. And sweetie,
Because not many people remember, but because it's not explained too much in the movies, but the Mordor before that was another elvish region, much like part of Middle Earth, called Eregion, which will actually be mentioned in this game. It was only when Sauron decided to make it base of operation that he got corrupted, which people mentioned it's treated as a sort of a twist towards the end of Rings of Power, but I need to see for myself how it's handled there.
Oh boy, Rings of Power.
Like I said, I will need to see it later. Oh shit, a Caragor!
What? No, snap, yeah.
Remember, time to put this pooch down.
Jeez, who pissed in your coffee, dude?
Sorry, Talion, pull the trigger.
Yeah. Get!
There we go. Oh, just flops there. Alright, next one.
At least he didn't attack you while you were analyzing the
Busted
artifact.
horn.
How nice
This
of him.
horn heralded the great victory at the end of the Second Age by the last alliance at the Battle of Dagorlad. It blew in defiance of the mouth of Sauron, an assembled army of more than 300,000 orcs, and the Dark Lord himself who ruled over forces aligned against the men and elves. It sounded the charge on the battle plain and serenaded the fallen dead, whose unfortunate souls who will be forever doomed to haunt the dead marshes. As we saw in the two towers, yeah, we don't really have a good fate on them.
Yeah.
They say the enemy is weak on the left, and that the dwarves will tear through them there.
You know, actually, come to think of it, do any of these video games... Okay, probably none of the ones in this series, but is there a Lord of the Rings video game that actually lets you properly fight Sauron? Because Sauron's one of those interesting villains where you only really see him physically... all like in the pre-show of the first movie.
Like I said, Jova, you keep saying that he's just another elf, but that's really reductive. He's more of a demigod, more than anything.
Oh, I'd say more that he used to be an elf before he kind of...
No. Even before corruption, he was literally just another demigod. You have to understand that it's explaining the Silmarillion, it's a bit complicated, but the hierarchy when it comes to the Pantheon in the Middle-earth works that at the top there's Ilúvatar, essentially capital G god. Then there are a set of the Valars, the more proper god, and each of them has a set of servants, and Sauron was one such as them. He was working for another guy, if I recall correctly, but then decided to betray them and work instead for the Lucifer, the Satan equivalent, Morgoth, which Sauron was his number 2. They will actually also tell a bit briefly about that in this game as well. So on a scale of power level, Sauron, technically speaking, it's on a different level. That's why it's so important that the ring doesn't go back to him in Lord of the Rings, because otherwise he will be basically unstoppable. Uh-oh. But anyway, moving on to the next one, if I recall correctly. Alright. A graven idol representing Morgoth. Before Numenor's fall, its priests and dark acolytes held sacrifices to strange gods in the temples, and graven idols such as these were freely worshipped. This idol represents Morgoth, the first Dark Lord of Middle-earth, and was likely carried to the mainland by missionaries seeking to spread his vile message. Again, and if Sauron was just bad news, Morgoth was a complete new scale of level, a literal proper god of evil, literally the Satan equivalent. To give you an idea about the scope also of his evilness, that's basically in Silmarillion. One of his creations were the dragons, and the second one, really not the first, the second one, Ancalagon, that was a black dragon, was so big that it literally darkened the sky, and his death literally leveled up a set of mountains. Again, the Silmarillion has this Old Testament kind of vibe because it's supposed to be the equivalent of the Bible of Middle-earth, and it has these immense battles that are such in great scope that I have no even idea how we can actually properly represent it on the big or small screen.
Honestly, so it sounds like Morgoth is like the Grindelwald to Sauron's Voldemort, where
he's more of a Morgoth is more of a Satan, where Sauron instead is more of a second-in-command lieutenant demon.
Well, you know, before he became the big bad. But my point is like, well, for as bad as Sauron was, apparently there was something even worse before him.
Yes, we're working on a different reverse way of what DBZ did. A grog ball. The myth of the filthy, crowd-encrusted Uruk grog ball is just that. Uruk trainers beat into their charges to keep their grog bows as clean as possible to avoid the old soldier's disease. These balls
Aw.
are commonly made of clay and baked in huge kilns. But Mordor has proven a fruitful realm of Europe for the orcs, and now some balls are made of metal or wood. Again, this
You
also tells
see,
to
even
say
in
what it
medieval
meant.
times, we can care about hygiene.
Like I said, the orcs are not just a mindless, primitive brute. They do have a set of culture of their own. It's just in a different way, and appearances is what deceive the humans.
I know that we're about to pretty much harvest this carcass of meat, but we have to make sure it's properly tempered and cooked. We're not savages, after all.
Well, and as mentioned, they don't want to get diseases as well.
Which is
And again-
ironic, given how media often goes out of its way to show the orcs as incredibly diseased at some points, at least in appearance.
It really depends on the writer.
Yeah.
The Warcraft series was one of the codifiers of portraying orcs in a more intelligent manner first, more than others.
I think to the point where you can even have them as protagonists at some point.
Yes. I forgot specifically if it was in Warcraft 3 or beforehand. A pickaxe, Uruk refers to mining as working the black seam, as they extract iron and adamant from the earth to fuel their war machine. They are adept miners, and oftentimes use steel pickaxes such as these want to extract ore. However, the pickaxes are in the hand of slaves, and the Uruks serve as overseers. Such terrible times.
Ugh.
Like I said, despite what we just said, the orcs are still very brutal, especially towards humans.
Damned if I can't tell who's worse. Who are we working for?
And yes, I don't recognize exactly, I don't remember the name, but he's actually the voice actor who did the professor in the next games.
Instead of having it cracked open.
Huh. Travis Willingham was also in that, but no,
I
he wasn't
think
the
it
one who
might be
voiced the
JB
professor.
Blank, I think.
Let me
I
check.
forgot the name of, I even forgot the name of the professor, the guy with the grey hair and the glasses.
I think it was.
He's so
Oh, wait,
bland.
no. I think it was Professor Vargas. I remember.
Hey, that's it,
it,
Vargas. That's it, Vargas,
Well,
yes.
Vargas was the villain, I'm talking about one of the
No.
protagonists.
No.
No,
Victor was.
Victor was the villain too. Victor.
What was the villain of the second game, though?
The villain in the
He
second
was
game.
some evil monk, but he wasn't called Vargas.
Yeah, I forgot. The characters are too bland for me to remember.
Yeah,
Coldblade.
Okay. It was Dr. Vargas, actually, and not Professor Vargas. Let's see.
Okay, then.
He's voiced by J.B. Blanc.
Yeah, it's JB Blanc. Okay, then. He can actually do a variety of range of voices. Again, some voice actors are more talented than others. Like again, we will also hear in this game, Nolan North, bless him, he actually has a talented voice. But when it comes to impressions, he may be able to do one or two tops.
Nah, I feel like Troy Baker's got him beat in that department.
Not just that, even like I said, JB Blanc also on his own.
Of all the aside from Nathan Drake, the one other more memorable character that Nolan North was voiced as of all characters, Engine.
Yeah,
Well,
I know.
Not just that, Vibs, like he's relatively versatile. For example, they got him for some reason to voice General Zod in the first Injustice game, I guess.
That was a thing. But yeah, no, his performance as Engine was one of the best things to come out of.
He also voices a
monsters
character
in
in
this.
Ratchet and Clank: A Crank in Time, and there he actually pulls up a good impression that doesn't make him recognizable immediately. So there's that too. Anyway, that was essentially a garden hole that is carried by the outsiders. The Gondorians were actually decided to live in Mordor of their own and not to pay, pay respect to their own country and just want to live on their own.
To the Eldar, all men are the followers. Fleeting visitors who soon pass.
Also, yes, Dweebs, in case you're wondering, the Wraith is one of those elves that doesn't particularly have much contempt for humans.
Go figure.
A branding iron, not all scorchy, is a common refrain among the orcs of Udûn. It is interesting to note that while branding these with red hot irons as punishment is commonplace, with the orcs searing into flesh of their unruly brethren, as much as they do to their slaves, all scorchy is unique, used only for the most recalcitrant. The orcs believe Scorchy holds sorcerer's powers, enabling to burn longer and hotter, and to scorch with such intensity, the pain can be felt for weeks after the branding.
God forbid you find an orc who's actually into it.
The second game actually allows captains potentially to dual wield these.
Oh, joy!
All right, you. not so brave now.
Yo, keep in mind, this is something that even orcs fear. Not to let you know it's bad news.
Filthy hands off me! It's simple, see. Do unto others quicker and harder than they do unto you. But at least you tried.
At least you tried.
At least you tried.
Harder. This is going to
Next
hurt.
time, try harder. Think about that while we're just giving you a little bit of a burn.
Old Scorchy! Anything but old Scorchy!
Damn.
Jesus.
Moving on, yeah.
So, yeah, that'll be an interesting one for the museum.
These Uruk have a twisted concept of justice.
It is not justice. It is the constant weeding out of the weak in favor of the strong.
Who the weak should fear.
Mm-hmm. Alright. A tether note, a parchment letter sent from the outcast Erin, details her imminent capture by the Uruks. The note is clearly intended for Hirgon, her husband and leader of the outcasts. Whoever was reached is intent recipient, it's another matter entirely. If you forgot, Hirgon is actually the bearded guy that we met 2 parts ago. The guy we will actually talk also later on. The slave that survived the Black Hand. And again, some of the artifacts actually contain some of the backstory of these characters. In this case, how Hirgon was, a ranger of Gondor, then actually met this woman as an outcast. Actually, because, he popped a boner for her, he actually decided to leave the rangers and actually live with the outcasts.
Your beloved wife, Erin.
Alas.
And then she died.
Well, we will see actually her fate proper in the game. This is just for the flavor.
We know what happened. She died.
No, she was only captured for the time being.
Really, it looked like she had her throat slit. That all indicates death.
Well, that was the wife of our protagonist. I'm talking about the one that was talking in the parchment.
Okay.
A ranger's reading primer. The rangers of Gondor are not just powerful warriors, they also perform a host of duties throughout the kingdom. Depending on the circumstances, a ranger may be called upon to serve as a mediator, a judge, a medic, and on occasion even a teacher. Rangers have been known to carry basic reading primers and, during their stays in villages where opportunities for learning are scant, to select a few favorite pupils and show them how to read and write. So there's this interesting dynamic because rangers are supposed to be still outcast and, not recognized properly as Gondor citizens, but they still have to do their job in a lot of occasions. That's kind of a dickish system, if you ask me.
Yes, it is.
Sound it out now.
I love this exchange.
Fear no. Why must you put me through this, Hirgon?
There's no one to blame but yourself. You begged me to teach you the words in my books.
Thank you for.
Honestly, that sounded like Adam Driver.
Hold on.
Look at this. It's a note for you.
My love. Be my...
No.
Try again.
Closer.
Wife.
Oh.
Aww.
That's actually very cute.
So she got
he actually
married
taught them to read in order to actually, actually profess to her. That's very
It sounds like that voice. It sounded like she got married to Kylo Ren 40 years after.
That's such a great situation. If only there was actually something that could interrupt us from this very moment. Wait, what?
Oh snap!
Like I said, ambush.
And again, so okay, I wonder.
Okay,
Can you ever
this one loves to sing, I guess.
I wonder, can you ever become infamous enough that you actually become a target of bosses, or like
More in the
captains
second game
general?
than this. The second game is more the Arkham City to this Arkham Asylum. This one is a bit more contained. There you go. I don't have time for you. But in the second game, they go all out with the situation you can actually, go into. You can get ambushed when you're not expecting it. A character can actually turn against you potentially, or a character can cheat that and jump out of nowhere even if they're not actually listed in the captain list. If you actually switch region, they can track you down and complain about that.
Wow, even that sounds like even more dialogue they pumped into them.
Again, I am actually pondering exactly how much to record of the second game because there's a lot of these situations that are just a lot of fun to see.
Oh yeah, no, it sounds like our playthrough of the
Basket
second game is going to have quite a bit, but yeah, no.
This utterly unremarkable basket, the fruit basket, has seen better days. Few, if any, of the outcast possession have survived. In bygone days, this basket would likely have been carried by women on their daily errands and used to carry all manner of goods. Well, I mean, it probably was useful, but it was still present. And this, again, this dialogue instead when the ranger turned outcast actually first met his eventual wife while he was still a ranger. He actually felt pity for her. Again, you get sort of these pieces of these. They're not technically necessary because when it comes to actually how the game presents to you these characters, like these ranger, you don't really need their backstory. But it's just extra information if you really want to know where they come from.
Yeah, this made me wonder. Do we ever get any artifacts tied to Talion and his family, maybe, to try and flesh things out with them?
A couple, but not a lot of them. It's more about more world building and about these side characters. Talion provides more of a comment and occasionally will relate to these. While instead of Wraith potentially judges them only on an artistic level. Like say, yeah, this is cool, but it was not made by elves, 0 out of 10.
You know, it would be funny if, like, the more artifacts you collect, the more the elf starts to respect humanity.
No, not really, unfortunately.
Oh, he's one of those
this element was one used by the outcast of Udûn for secret rituals. The horns and the lever were taken from wild knight, kind of Arav, hunted from Mordor in the fields of Rune. It dates from distant time when these men were prisoners of Gondor, made to toil on the construction of the Towers of Teeth. Even now, the outcast remains mistrustful of those wearing metal armor. His helmet is a reminder of dark time past, a harbinger of darker times to come, and a symbol of the outcast's determination to never again live under the yoke of slavery. Like I said, the outcasts decide to, you know, reject properly Gondor and live on their own without having to form a kingdom of their own, just staying as a tribe of their own in the realm of Mordor. As time tells, they really did not survive eventually. And those who actually did not manage to flee either became slaves or got killed. It's also tied to more how Tolkien actually brought the other species of humans in the East, which is currently the most outdated aspect, because as to be expected, it's probably more explained in the second game more than this, but as to be expected from a British guy that lived in the early 1900s, depicting people equivalent from the Middle East was not in a more graceful way. Could have been worse, but it showcases the time it was made.
It does lead to some people wondering if, again, the medieval and dark ages definitely had tons of problems, but maybe they weren't all as bad as media tends to portray them.
Like you said,
nowadays.
each age has his angels and demons. As a lot of TV tropes even mentions during the tropes the Dung ages, and says that it wasn't as dire as you will mention, but it was more about in between. You got your bad stuff, but it wasn't as completely garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly did not help when the bubonic plague, hit. But
yeah.
Anyway, an excavator cog. This cog was split from one of the great Uruk war machines, perhaps an excavator. As the Uruk push further and further into Mordor, they had to turn up the land, seeking resources to fuel the Dark Lord's massive war effort. Excavators churned the ground to uncover metal for the forges, clay for the kilns, and any artifacts, weapons, or tools that might be of use. So yeah, while still crude, they do have a way of technology. It's just that probably in the proper story of Lord of the Rings, it was Saruman essentially perfected thanks to his knowledge as an history. And yes, this is another collection from the spy, and Saruman is talking with them. Although, for obvious reasons, they couldn't get Christopher Lee Black, so J.B. Blanc actually fills in. I think Corey Burton would have been fine instead.
Yeah, honestly, when I think Christopher Lee sounded like, I think Corey Burton.
Well, yeah, he's the go-to one.
which just makes it weird that they didn't go with him for this.
He's not present in general in this game, so maybe it was a case where he wasn't even available, so he said no or something like that.
That is weird, because Corey Burton is not typically known for saying no to projects.
Was he replaced as Entropy in Crash 4? And yes, I know what he said.
Yes. I get you, because he was brought back for Crash Team Racing and the Insane Trilogy.
I know it was played by Corey Burton, yes.
Entropy is voiced by John Paul Carliak in Crash 4.
Dibs. He was talking about engine, not entropy.
No, Entropy, sorry, my bad. I was talking about but still.
Oh, Entropy, because it's funny. Corey Burton voiced both Engine and Entropy in the Insane Trilogy, but as for Crash 4, yeah.
A Ranger's cloak clasp. These decorative metal bands were used by Rangers primarily to keep their cloaks closed. As Guardsmen of Gondor, Rangers were held to exacting standards by their masters, and this meant keeping their clasp polished. Rangers will use the clasp as makeshift signal devices, catching sunlight to create reflective flashes to communicate with their comrades over long distances. Again, simple coding, we've seen it in other movies, not just these.
Mm-hmm.
The towers will be up soon. Don't know why we're calling them the Teeth. They should be called the Jaw.
Because they'll be hitting us there.
Indeed. Right on the jaw and as often as they can.
That's a grim outlook, brother. You'll be able
Also,
to
that's
see
classic
the
sides.
and fight if necessary.
Like I said, there are still quite a bit of selection. There go 42 total artifacts, but for now we collected all of them in this region anyway.
Dear Heil was about to take the oath.
The ones the other regions will be collected eventually on their own. But for the time being, we're done basically with the cleanup, so to the instead next part, where we instead, continue, reprise our proper investigation. Yeah.
See ya.
See ya.